Hello guys, this is the Scribe and thank you for watching this YouTube video. So I want to make a discussion for you guys out there on YouTube. I'm sure there's some very intelligent people out there who probably know much more about viruses than I will ever know about them. But this is the thing that I've been thinking of for quite some time and I can't get it off my mind. Where do viruses actually come from? Now, scientists say they probably originated from simple life or originated before life began, and I have a big problem with that because they seem to be symbiotic with other life forms. It's not like they are just killing everything around them. They seem to be symbiotic almost, and sometimes they go into a state of how can we say hibernation as well, or dormant. And there are many different viruses, but they all hold something very, very similar. They're round, not on the most part. I mean, that's not necessarily true, but a lot of them have oval-like shapes with spikes on the end. And this has a lot in common with pollen. Exactly the same. You can see the pictures I've brought up here. The ones from pollen are taken by an electronic microscope, and the ones from viruses are sort of artistic impressions of viruses, and that's basically backed by scientists themselves who have observed this through electronic microscopes. Even then it's difficult to pinpoint exactly where they are. So where do you guys think where do you think viruses actually come from? Just think about it for a second. And then here's the thing to consider. What does pollen do? And what do viruses do that are very, very similar? They find a cell that they can invade. They go into the cell, both pollen and viruses, and then what do? They make replicants of themselves. Of course, with the male and female gametes, which is what pollen is, you have the ability to create new life and new plants, and with humans that would be the sperm and the egg, so that creates a new human, and many other creatures hold that kind of reproduction pattern. So the male gamete does actually make copies of itself, but so does the female gamete as well. But the sperm or the pollen has to invade a cell, the right cell, to be able to do that. And so is true with viruses as well. They have to find the right cell. They can't just invade hair or fingernails. They can't even invade toes or whatever. They have to find a certain kind of cell to invade. And that's true with most viruses. In fact, most of them can't even invade other animals. They're either symbiotic with humans, symbiotic with bats, and sometimes they jump, of course, because they change the receivers at the end of their big spikes, whatever you call them. So they do change and they can actually hop because it's very easy for them to do that. But on the most part, it takes them time to do that. They can't do it straight away, and they do have to find the right cell to infect. Otherwise, they fail, and then they're wiped out by the immune system, or maybe age just deteriorates them anyway. And if they find themselves into the environment, that kills them too. So they're very similar with pollen. Shape very similar, and you can see the pictures I've put on the video itself. You can see pollen on the top, and you see the spikes they have, the little things that help them to invade the cell. And you can also see how viruses have exactly the same kind of system. So they're very similar. So why let's say pollen did do this, why did it jump suddenly from going to the right plant to go into an animal? Well, it mutated. Tiny little mutations done over time. Sperm does that. Even pollen does it over time. And if we think about it, what does a cold virus and pollen have in common? They create cold and flu-like symptoms. Pollen also creates cold-like symptoms in some humans who are vulnerable to it, or allergic to it at least, because it aggravates the cell walls. And the pollen itself is trying to go in to the cell walls. It's refused, but it does do damage. the immune system has to react to it. So pollen is actually trying to invade other cells. It just can't. It has to find the right kind of cell, or the female gamete. But if it gets mutated suddenly, a big evolutionary jump, then we can have a situation where many die. Many animals die. If you have a look at lions, I'm not sure it was a number of decades ago or something, but they died from some kind of canine fever. Thousands of them. Wiped out like 1/3 of the population of lions. So when it does that, it can kill a lot. And here's another thing to consider. Let's say it happens sort of in the Jurassic period, right? Some pollen in the air mutated, invaded the cells of the dinosaurs, killed them out, wiped them out, and started to mutate suddenly as it was replicating itself. And because it didn't have the real female gamete, the cell sort of like in a cancerous sort of state, because it's invaded by another cell, which is very strange, makes replicants of the kind of pollen, which is now kind of virus in itself, and it spreads from one dinosaur to another to another to another and kills them all, creating flu-like symptoms, which pollen actually does already. Okay, so that's another thing. But they also have similar shapes on the end of it, which is very interesting. And of course, with the right kind of mutation, it would change. And dinosaurs, being the biggest of animals and having the largest cells, would be more vulnerable if pollen did actually mutate and invaded their cells and managed to actually sink itself in. Just think about that for a second. I know they show like they've got craters on the Earth when it's been struck by meteorites and asteroids, and I accept that, but I'm just putting this out there. I'm not saying it's fact. It could be. But it's something to consider, because scientists don't really have, as far as I can tell, a clear answer of where viruses come from. They just say it was created more or less at the same time cells were. I don't think they were. I think plants or fungus created this kind of situation, and then it started to invade animals. And after that, the animals built some type of immunity up to it, and then things progressed from there. So why have they got simple? I mean, if the virus itself could find the right, let's say if it is a kind of pollen, the right female gamete, it could create a new life, for instance. Maybe. It's hard to say, because it's been so long that that's happened. Its DNA could have been altered drastically to fit this kind of pattern of a lifestyle it now has. So it evolved into the viruses we see today. What do you guys think about this? I mean, to me, I think it's an interesting discussion. And of course, as we see this particular virus, the COVID-19, which is a real virus. I mean, people are saying, oh, it's all fake and all that. No, the virus itself is real. The panic might be completely taken out of the charts. I mean, I do think they're taking the piss, the governments, a bit with this. But then again, it could be a difficult situation, something I don't really understand. But then again, do you want all your freedoms taken away forever? I mean, they can say at any time, this viruses have jumped and we can never allow people to socialize again. Would you like that? Or would you want to take the risk with the virus, get it, become immune to it, and then just go on with your life? Of course, they will make vaccines for this, which has a number of other situations that can happen. I mean, I'm not an anti-vaccine person too much, but I do know that these vaccinations can cause damage in certain individuals, mainly because they react to them in an allergic reaction response in the brain. So when somebody puts like egg kind of protein in a vaccine and injects it into somebody else, some people have an allergic reaction to that. And they even ask at the vaccination clinics, does your kid, or do you have an egg allergy? Because it can be dangerous if you do. We may not be able to give it to you. So they do actually say that is a possibility. So that's just going out there, and I want people to actually think about this a bit. And maybe there is somebody who is much more, how can I pull it, knowledgeable on viruses than I could ever be, and might be able to give me an answer on this, because I really don't know if this is true, but they do seem very similar, don't they? Viruses and pollen do have a lot of similarities, and if it was mutated, boy, could it do some damage. Imagine that pollen that's aggravating the back of your throat, right, very, very small, and then suddenly it mutates, right, and you're a big dinosaur with larger cells than humans, and it just imprints itself straight into the cell wall and starts replicating itself. It could wipe them all out straight away. That's kind of an idea. Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now. See you later. I have rambled on a little bit, but I tend to do that anyway. Thanks. Bye bye.